Your ancestors worked about 2 hours a day. You will work more than that before you've even finished breakfast, checked your phone, and sat in traffic. Something happened between then and now, and almost nobody talks about what we actually lost. In 1966, an anthropologist named Richard Lee traveled into the Kalahari Desert to live with a group of hunter-gatherers called the Juhuanzi. He didn't just observe them, he tracked their time down to the minute. Every hour, every task, for weeks. His conclusion shocked the entire field of anthropology. These people living with almost no possessions, no stored food, and no modern tools worked roughly 15 hours a week, not 15 hours a day. A week. Lee called it something that still makes economists uncomfortable: the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had things, affluent because they had time. So what did they actually do with all those hours? Let's walk through the day. Sunrise. You wake up not to an alarm, but to light changing on your face and the sound of camp stirring around you. There's no snooze button, there's no rush. The day simply begins when your body says it begins. You own almost nothing. A digging stick, maybe a bow, a few hides. Everything you have fits in a single bag you could carry at a dead run if you had to. Ownership, in the way we understand it, barely exists yet. Nobody is comparing what they have to what the next tent over has, because there is nothing to compare. Everyone has roughly the same amount of nothing. Your camp has maybe 25 to 30 people in it. You know every single one of them, not their social media profile, not their job title. You know their entire life story because you've been hearing it around the same fire since you were born. The first hour of the day is talking, not small talk. In 1990, anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied exactly what hunter-gatherers spend their conversations on, and she found something specific. Daytime conversation was almost entirely social bookkeeping. Who took too much meat last time? Who's been avoiding their turn at the hard work? Who told a joke so good it's still getting repeated 3 camps over? This wasn't gossip in the way we use the word. This was the entire legal system. There were no courts, no police, no jails. If someone became a problem, the camp simply talked about them until either their behavior changed or eventually no camp would have them. That was the harshest punishment a person could face, and it rarely had to be used twice. Mid-morning, the hunters head out. And here's something that breaks most people's mental image of the caveman. Hunting almost never works. Anthropologist Frank Marlowe spent decades studying the Hadza in Tanzania, and he found that on most days, hunters come home with nothing. A successful large kill might happen once every few days, sometimes less. A hunter might walk 15 miles, track an animal for hours, lose the trail, and come home with a couple of small birds and a sore back. So who actually fed the camp? The women did. Among groups like the Hadza, women provide more than half of all daily calories, not through luck, but through steady, reliable gathering, digging roots, climbing for honey, cracking open nuts that have fed their families for generations. The men brought excitement, the women brought dinner, and the most productive person in camp usually wasn't young. It was often a grandmother. Women in their 50s and 60s regularly outgather mothers half their age, some of them still walking 5 to 10 miles a day, well into their 70s. Anthropologists have a name for this pattern: the grandmother hypothesis. It may be the reason human women are the only female primates on Earth who live for decades after they stop having children. Grandmothers who kept feeding grandchildren made the whole species more likely to survive. Children spent their mornings the same way children have for 300,000 years, watching, copying, playing at the exact same tasks the adults were doing beside them. A 3-year-old plays with a toy digging stick next to her mother, who's digging up the real thing. By 6 years old, that same child could find her own food. By 10, he was meaningfully contributing to the family's survival. By 8, a boy could be handed a bow and sent out alone, and coming back with a single bird was simply what an 8-year-old did that day. Nobody sat them down for a lesson, nobody graded them. They just never left the room where life was happening. If a child fell, another child picked them up. If a child asked a question, an older sibling usually answered it before an adult ever had the chance. This was the entire school system, and it required no buildings, no schedule, and no one in charge. Midday, the first food comes back into camp, and it gets shared immediately. Not as a kindness, as a rule. If a hunter kills something large, he doesn't own that meat. He distributes it and often keeps one of the worst cuts for himself. Researchers believe this constant tracked sharing, remembering who gave what, who owes who, is one of the pressures that built the size of the human brain in the first place. Keeping score of 100 social debts takes real computing power. Then comes the heat of the day, and everything stops. Nobody works through it. People nap, sit in shade, repair tools, weave grass into baskets, pick lice from each other's hair, which sounds unpleasant, but is really just an excuse to sit close to someone you love for an hour. This is not laziness. This is the entire economy agreeing to pause at the same time, every single day, forever. And yes, conflicts happen. These were people, not saints. Jealousy, stolen tools, grudges that flared up out of nowhere. But the way conflicts ended was different from how we end them. In a world where everything you own fits in a bag you can carry, most disputes ended the same way. One person simply left, walked to another camp for a few weeks. By the time they came back, the anger had usually cooled on its own. Most of us can't do that with a mortgage and a job waiting for us on Monday. Late afternoon, the pace returns. People walk to visit other camps, trade news, maybe arrange a marriage. By adulthood, you personally know over 100 people, by name, by history, by reputation, spread across camps you've been visiting your entire life. Evening, cooking begins. Roots buried in the coals, meat boiled in hide pouches with hot stones, seeds chewed soft for the smallest children who don't have teeth for it yet. And then the entire camp eats together, the way they have every single night for 300,000 years. This wasn't paradise. They buried children. They got sick with no medicine to help them. Roughly 4 out of every 10 kids didn't make it to age 5. Nobody is arguing we should go back. But somewhere in the last 10,000 years, we made a trade nobody remembers agreeing to. We traded 15 hours of work for 40, 50, 60. We traded a camp of 30 people who knew our entire life story for a phone full of hundreds of people who know almost nothing about us. We traded a body that rested when it was hot and worked when it wasn't, for a schedule that doesn't care what your body wants at all. You inherited the same nervous system, the same need for rest, for touch, for people who actually know your name and your history. It's still in there, running underneath everything, wondering where the other 29 people went.